So this week, our nature curiosity is going to be beavers, and specifically how they build those incredible dams and why their dams are so important. And yeah, I think that this is a really fascinating topic. I learned a lot through researching it. What about you, Dustin? Are you fired up to talk about beaver dams?
I love talking about beavers because we've got a personal connection to them here on our lake. There are two beaver dams right nearby, and it's been really amazing and rewarding to see them in action as they build and maintain those dams over the years, and also to see the impact that those dams have had in terms of transforming the habitat in the 20 years that we've lived here. I've actually seen it pendulum from uh, deeper water with kind of fresh young dead trees to snags that have fallen over, and now it's shallower water with less growth in there. So being able to see that personally over time has been rewarding and unexpected.
Yeah, I love them too. And I'll say my favorite time of year sometimes is early spring. As soon as the ice melts, we see them all over, swimming all over the lake, checking out like what wood didn't make it through the winter on the shoreline. And I just love it when I see them. So, okay, so to kick things off, I'm going to start with some basics that we've not only observed by living on a small lake that includes beavers, but also some of the research that we did to prepare for this topic for you guys this week. So, starting with site selection, one of the things that I wanted to learn when we decided to take on this topic was how do the beavers that live on our lake figure out where they want to build their dams? Is there anything specific in mind when they pick those locations? And what the research I found taught me is that there absolutely is. So, the first thing that beavers prioritize when it comes to site selection is the right water flow and depth for their dam. They are usually looking for very slow moving or still water because it's easier, as you can imagine, to build a dam in those conditions than if they try to build it in an area where there is rushing, fast moving water that would just destroy the dam even as they're trying to construct
Yeah,
it.
you've never seen whitewater rafting go across a beaver dam, have you?
No, no, you have not. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't any water flow in locations where they build their dam, but if there is stronger water flow and it's not almost still water, what they'll do is construct their dams at an angle, or they'll build it with spillways in order to kind of manage that water pressure that's up against the dam itself and prevent breaches from happening. The next thing when it comes to water that they're looking for is they want it to be at least 2 to 3 feet in depth. They don't want really, really shallow water. They also don't want really, really deep water. But why they're looking for water that's 2 to 3 feet in depth, they want to create this pond effect by using the dam. And that pond will protect them for predators when they're living in that area. They also need it that deep so that once it ponds up on them, they have underwater entrances to get into their lodges. Which makes it safer for them. It keeps other predators from being able to get into the lodge. And this depth also ensures that the pond isn't necessarily going to freeze solid in winter, which would be preventative for them to be able to get in and out of their homes. They also like to have their dams and their lodges set up near food sources. Obviously, a beaver's got to eat. So they eat aquatic plants. They also like trees. And the trees that they prefer are birch and aspen and willow trees, if they can find those as well. They need access to mud and stone because that goes into part of the construction of their dam and their lodge, which Dustin's going to go over in a minute. And of course, branches that they can use for building their dam as well. And they finally prefer areas with dense vegetation or steep banks, which also protects them from predators and makes it a little bit more difficult for predators to get to them. So that's kind of all the criteria that a beaver is keeping in mind when it's doing its site selection as the little civil engineers that they are. Dustin, do you want to walk us through what you've found and observed on construction, how they construct their
Yeah,
dams?
so first is physiologically. Beavers' teeth grow nonstop for their entire life. So they use their teeth and their paws to cut down trees and branches, but that wears down their teeth and they continue to grow, and they have this tool that's always being sharpened and being refreshed along the way. When they cut that stuff down, they have a number of different purposes for it. So they transport all those sticks and logs and stuff to the site, and they build it into layers. The base layer of the dam is made up of heavy logs for stability at the bottom. Then the middle layer is sort of interwoven medium size branches that create the structure. And then on the top, they use smaller sticks, stones, and mud to seal up the gaps. And then they're going through this constant process of tweaking and fine tuning and kind of futzing with their dam. So it's really special when you have an opportunity to see a beaver that doesn't know you're watching and is just going about his business.
Okay. Anything like, as far as, are there any specific engineering principles or anything that you've
So they
observed
build
them
their dams
following?
into sort of a convex shape so that the water kind of hits the curve and spreads out a little bit. So it's not just a straight dam if you look at it closely. They're always constantly monitoring and repairing what's going on in there. And they use these same skills to build their lodges and also to build a winter storage cache of barky sticks and things like that, because beavers do not hibernate over the wintertime. They do stay in their lodge a lot more, and when the lake is iced over, they need to have a nearby food source that they've saved up. So when they cut everything down, they might think it's great for a dam, or they might think this is delicious to, sustain them through the winter.
And, one of the things that I found most interesting was, I know the impact that beaver dams have on areas. They can flood areas, for sure, but there's also some beneficial ecological things that happen because of these beavers who are building these structures. Walk us through some of that.
Yeah, so we've gotten great observable history from beavers because when Europeans came to North America and hunted beavers for their pelts and for their castor oil, which was a major resource, beavers eventually kind of became nearly, or in some areas, fully extirpated, and people could see the difference in the habitats. And at first might have thought, oh, this is great. With no beavers, there's drier land and we can build houses in places. But then they also saw that created higher instances of erosion and things like that. And then as we got into the era of modern conservation, say in the 1970s forward, we learned that the beavers coming back actually had a much more beneficial impact than we had realized by ensuring better habitats for a number of different species, reducing the possibility of erosion because it's not like a flash flood situation taking all of the water out, but instead a gradual increasing and draining of the beaver areas. So they act like natural sponges, and it stores water from heavy rains and releases it during the droughts over a much slower process. And then that habitat is great for birders and other people who want to see the wildlife that's in there. Beaver dams are also a great place to place a game camera to see what activity you might have, because often they serve as natural crossing places for other species as well.
That's interesting. But I've got something even more interesting to share.
Okay.
Did you know that the world's largest beaver dam, it's in Canada, and it's over 2,700 feet long? It's so big, it is visible from space.
Wow, that's over half a mile. That's crazy.
Yeah. Those are some serious engineers right there. A couple more fun facts for you guys. Beaver dams can last for decades, even after the beavers are no longer there. The activity of beavers can actually alter local temperatures and humidity levels through the construction of their dams and how that impacts water depth in certain areas. And I think this fact was just absolutely adorable. The little muskrats that we also see around the lake, they will sometimes share the beaver lodges with the beavers.
I did know that one, although in my experience, I've seen the beavers defending their lodge from the muskrats here.
No.
But I'm sure they have some friendly relations too.
In my mind, I am going to believe that they're just one happy community and they're all just living together on the lake and sharing their little lodges, which I think is absolutely adorable. So there you go. For all the trivia lovers out there who wanted to see more segments on stuff like this, there's some trivia for you.
Oh yeah? Well, did you know about Castoroides?
Castoroides.
So
No.
The North American beaver is named Castor canadensis after its castor oil in Canada, where it is was well established. when they were discovered, but Castoroides was the world's largest rodent in history.
Okay.
And it was a beaver. It was a giant beaver up to 200 pounds that roamed North America recently, up to about 10 or 12,000 years ago. So while the first people were here.
That is crazy. Can you guys imagine like a rodent the size of a bear walking around? Like, I don't have a problem with rodents, but I don't know that I want that either.
Right. And there's some indigenous mythology around how the Great Lakes were formed that seem to blame the giant beavers for building giant dams that created giant waterfalls and dammed up the Great Lakes. So there is this overlap of beaver lore with indigenous mythology around the giant beaver.
All right. Well, there you go. There you have it. So what we've learned today is beavers are really more than just dam builders. They're ecosystem engineers. And they're also water quality managers. That's actually one thing I forgot to mention is because the beaver dams slow down the flow of water a little bit, it allows sediment in the water to have the time to be able to settle so that the water flowing downstream from a beaver dam is generally cleaner than if that beaver dam was not there to provide that service.
That's right. It's a filter.
Dustin, any final words you want to share?
Just a reminder to our friends to keep your eyes on the skies and your hearts in the wild. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.